Podcast Alley. This is Sports and More with Dean Millard.
I couldn't imagine playing and building up to where, how close the league is this year, how big of a dogfight a lot of these teams are in to being in or out of the playoffs, or even, first or third place in your division, let's just say. Like, it's that close in some of these divisions and some of these playoff races, to just being like shut down completely in your house, doing squats with your dog and doing workouts with your wife and girlfriend while she's flipping over. Hey, the guys are posting these videos of like, this is it. This is what they're doing. Like, what are they doing? How do you do this? And then you're just going to come back in. Like, I'm telling you, 1 day off is brutal. 2 days off is awful. You feel like you had a week off after 2 days off. And now these guys are going to go literally from their couch, from doing like push-ups and sit-ups at their house to jumping into like NHL playoff games. It's absolutely wild situation. Totally wild.
Hello there, and welcome to Sports and More, the podcast, episode 40. My name is Dean Millard, and that was the voice of Colby Armstrong, former NHLer, who joins me this week. Welcome to the show, everybody. If you're listening on whatever podcast app you are, thank you very much. If you're watching on our YouTube channel or any of our social media streams, welcome to the Marsh at a Podcast Alley. Really excited about today's show. And if you're watching, there's a look at what's going on. All right. This is going to be a fun conversation. Here's the lineup for today's program. Colby Armstrong will be the main guest. We're going to chat with him about homeschooling, his days as a Red Deer Rebel, winning the Memorial Cup in 2001, and 3 first overall picks that he played with in his career. 2 of them undoubtedly Hall of Famers. One of them already is. Alexander Daigle, Mario Lemieux, and Sidney Crosby. He played with all 3 of them. We had a lot of laughs on this conversation. I've known Colby since his days as a rookie with the Red Deer Rebels. His first year was my first year in Red Deer, and watching that team win the Memorial Cup was a lot of fun. So we'll chat with him about that. He also played in Toronto and Montreal, which are hockey meccas. Our top 3 question will be about what you're watching, and our poll question is about awarding the Stanley Cup, both of them brought to you by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. But man, oh man, things are changing like literally by the moment. You're sitting there, it's Tuesday, you're kind of relaxed, I don't know what it is that you're getting into, and then boom. The NHL extends self-quarantine for players and staff until April 15th. And so you're like, okay, that's not good news at all, because the playoffs were supposed to start a couple of weeks before that. So you're like, okay, well, maybe they can still push it back and we'll see what happens. Then Toronto extends their ban on mass events until June 30th. So I have no idea how the NHL is going to get a season in or playoffs unless they go neutral sites. That's the only way I think that they can get it in. I'm watching on the left screen. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, I'm watching the Oilers, and this is a throwback game to the last time they played against the Winnipeg Jets. And on the right side, I'm just watching Clayton Kershaw, and it's baseball on MLB The Show 20. I can't get enough baseball. So that's what I've been doing the last little while, is watching classic games. That's going to wear out fairly quickly for a lot of people. Sidney Crosby, by the way, named top all-around player by the NHLPA in an ESPN poll. Carey Price, top goaltender. McDavid, the top forward. Victor Hedman, the top defenseman. And I that's, a lot of people have been really critical of Carey Price, and the players voting on this, so they think Carey Price is still the top goaltender. And also new dates announced for the Tokyo Olympics. They will be running now July 23rd into August of 2001. So obviously that was needed to happen. That needed to be pushed back for sure. All right, before we get into our top three, I want to tell you that it's presented by Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. Fantasy sports are great, and now with Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports, it's more realistic than ever. You can own one of only 31 professional fantasy hockey franchises in the world. You have 23-man rosters. You have a 27-player reserve list where scouts come into equation. You can be an owner of a team or a scout and sell players. It's so cool. You could stockpile for the future, try to win now. Daily roster moves, of course, a wickedly unique playoff format when the playoffs eventually get here. And they're not just players on your roster, they're digital assets. You can use digital currency to buy and sell players, build a championship team, or stockpile for the future. So there's only a few franchises left. If you're watching, you can see the link to where you can go and bid on a franchise right now. It's www.airauctioneer.com/UFF sports NHL fantasy franchise auction. Open your free account, make your bid, and you will be notified if you are indeed outbid. In this format, you own the game, so I'd advise you to get in the game. This is my top three topic today. What sporting events would you watch right now in self-isolation? If you could watch anything, if you could stream any three sporting events, any era, magically appear on your TV screen, what would they be? I had to think about this because there's a lot of things that I've really enjoyed, but my top three, my honorable mention is the 2001 Memorial Cup by the Red Deer Rebels, because I just finished talking about it with Colby Armstrong, and I remember it so well. I knew that team like the back of my hand, and it was just such a fun season to travel and not travel. Well, we did travel in the playoffs, but follow along that team and watch them win in overtime in such dramatic fashion. So definitely gets my honorable mention. Number three for me is the 04 Masters, Phil Mickelson winning his first green jacket and that leap. The 88 World Series, if anybody knows me, they knows me. I'm a huge Dodger fan, and I haven't celebrated a World Series since 88. I did celebrate for the Blue Jays because I was Canadian, but I haven't celebrated for the Dodgers since 88. So I would watch the entire World Series, particularly Game 1, where there was that magical, legendary Dodger moment by legendary Dodger Kirk Gibson off Dennis Eckersley. And number one for me is the 87 Canada Cup. For me, it's the best hockey ever played, 6-5, 6-5, 6-5. And the ultimate goal, Gretzky to Lemieux, using Larry Murphy as the ultimate decoy for Canada to beat the Soviet Union in 87 Canada Cup. That is, to me, the best hockey ever played. So that's what I would be going with if I could watch any. And I have been watching some of that. I have watched some of the Canada Cups for sure. You can get more details about Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports at uffsports.com. And they might have something cool cooking as we're trying to fill the void when it comes to sports. So check it out, uffsports.com. And at Podcast Alley this week, One-Timers with Colby Armstrong will come out later in the week. We had some fun. Hart Steinfeld of Sundial Cannabis will join me on the Cannabis 101 podcast tomorrow. We'll also have one-hitters with Hart. No Prospects baseball show this week. Hopefully we get back to regularly scheduled programming in a little bit. You can check out all the details at podcastalley.ca, and it's easy to get in touch with us. sportsandmore.ca is the website. At Duck Millard on Twitter. At Sports and More Podcast on Instagram, Sports and More 35 on Facebook, and Sports and More Pod at gmail.com is how you get in touch with us if you are interested. Easiest ways to get us on Twitter at Duck Millard or email sportsandmorepod at gmail.com. Let's find out a little bit more about Colby Armstrong in the bio.
time for the bio.
Colby Armstrong was born in Lloydminster, Saskatchewan, and grew up in Saskatoon. He was a 6th-round pick of the Red Deer Rebels of the WHL, where he played 4 years, won a Memorial Cup, and was taken in the first round of the 2001 NHL draft by the Pittsburgh Penguins. He spent 3.5 years in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Pennsylvania, playing for the Penguins AHL team, before making his NHL debut on December 29, 2005 versus the New Jersey Devils in Pittsburgh. He was traded to the Atlanta Thrashers at the deadline in 2008 and spent 2.5 years in Atlanta before signing as a free agent with the Toronto Maple Leafs. The Leafs bought out the final year of his contract, and he signed with his childhood team, the Montreal Canadiens, to finish his NHL career. He had a short stint in the Swedish League before retiring and becoming an analyst with Rogers Sportsnet and on Pittsburgh Penguins broadcasts. He lives with his wife, son, and 3 daughters in Pittsburgh. Colby, what is life in the Armstrong household like right now? Are you like a homeschool teacher right now? Like, what's going on in your house?
Well, we got on the Google Classrooms just the other day for the homeschooling part, and I have no clue. Like, literally, there's probably parents out there right now going through this whole thing that I don't really even know how to use my phone properly. Once I quit hockey and I started working in broadcasting, like, I understand that you have to people send emails. We never really did emails before, so even that is like something crazy for me. So setting up a Google Classroom and trying to teach my kids schooling and going through these things and all this stuff on computers is pretty different. It has been challenging. We have 4 kids, so day to day, and it's been really rainy here in Pittsburgh right now, where we live. So it's been rainy. It would help a lot more if the sun ever did come out. I'm sure for everyone out there who's listening to this, they're saying, "Yeah, no doubt, dummy." But yeah, we're stuck in the house. It's crazy. 4 kids, absolutely wild. 9, 6, 4, and a 3-year-old.
Wow.
And I'm telling you, it's going nuts. But we're getting a lot of stuff done, cleaning up stuff, decluttering our lives right now. There is some good coming out of this, and obviously spending time at home. I can't say it hasn't been awful, and hanging out with my kids and my wife all day. It's been pretty fun. It's been pretty good.
Oh, that's good. Today came down that the NHL, Darren Dreger reporting that April 15th is the self-quarantine extended to for the National Hockey League. Percentage-wise, where's your percentage that there'll be a Stanley Cup champion this year? What do you think?
Right now, at this point, I would just say, I think it's probably 80% not going to play.
Yeah.
I would say it's at that right now, and maybe, I don't know, and the further we go, I know that we've just gotten extended to stay at home and social distancing till the end of April, and I know they picked their date at April 15th, and I think it's just, being optimistic and not taking too big of a step, with looking at the full cancellation of the rest of this NHL season, to kind of just try to take it probably little chunks at a time here and reassess as it's going along. But, oh man, this is, I know they desperately want to get it in, and I think just think of the ramifications if they do get it in, when it stretches into likely, training camps, right? So it's going to stretch into training camps and what's going to happen the next season. And, there's all sorts of, questions also with players escrow and what'll happen with that going into next year. So lots of big issues right now. I hope they can get it in. I hope they can get some kind of playoff in, and we can see Lord Stanley be handed out. But at this point, I'd say 80% chance right now, Dean.
Our poll question on this episode, the Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports poll question is, if you had to choose between one of these 4 outcomes, a 1-game playoff, so every series is 1 game, so basically an NCAA format basketball, best of 3, best of 5, or no cup. I took best of 7 out because everybody wants a best of 7, but if you had to choose between those 4, 1 game, best of 3, best of 5, or not handing out a Stanley Cup, because some people say it has to be 16 wins or bust.
Yes, I would say best of 5.
Okay.
Just go. I would say best of 5. You get some games in each rank. You get some revenue up. You can, you got to get some of these games in, and if you could fit that in, that would be the best. That'd be my first choice for sure. just for obviously the league's sake. I think it, obviously it's not 7, best of 7, but it adds a little bit more legitimacy with the scheduling and what you can make up and what you can do. And also you can get some games in some of these rinks and get a little back and forth action and create a little bit of a series out of it.
Yeah, I think that would be if you're not going to go 7, at least 5, because then it allows you to have an off game, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. It totally does, and it can add to some just more games too, which I think is important. I think it's important for the players. I think it's important. What are these guys going to do? Like this is nuts, right? Like I couldn't imagine playing and building up to where how close the league is this year, how big of a dogfight a lot of these teams are in to being in or out of the playoffs, or even first or third place in your division. Let's just say, like, it's that close in some of these divisions and some of these playoff races, to just being like shut down completely in your house, doing squats with your dog and doing workouts with your wife and girlfriend while just flipping over. The guys are posting these videos of like, this is it. This is what they're doing. Like, what are they doing? How do you do this? And then you're just going to come back in. Like, I'm telling you, 1 day off is brutal. 2 days off is awful. You feel like you had a week off after 2 days off. And now these guys are going to go literally from their couch, from doing like push-ups and sit-ups at their house to jumping into like NHL playoff games. It's an absolutely wild situation. Totally wild.
Yeah, I just can't imagine what this must be like. This is like when you are gearing up, absolutely peak time, and they're shut down. And you had the ultimate Battle of Alberta playoff series setup going. And the one thing, Colby, if they do play, everybody's rested, so it's great. But what are the players thinking right now? Like the guys that you've been chatting with, are they just going stir crazy right now, and with just not knowing?
Yeah, I think the big thing, and me talking to them, is just nobody knows. Like, they don't know what's going on. Like, they're just trying to get through each day, and they said the guys that I talked to said they're like working out, like they're getting ready to go to training camp, and like it's summer, like they're just like staying in the best shape that they can, like crazy every day. They're keeping on top of it, and with no light at the end of the tunnel right now, because no one knows what's going to happen, or where they're going to be, or when this is going to be done. So I think just the unknown for them right now is just really, really, really strange. But yeah, I think Mark Giordano said the other day, right? Like, I think he said on their little Zoom conference calls that they've been doing, he said, like, everyone will be healthy. Like, it'll be a great playoffs if we ever do come back. Like, you've never seen guys as healthy as they'll be going into a playoffs in this situation. So I live in Pittsburgh. The Penguins have been banged up all year. They've had a ton of injuries. So, there's lots of chatter, obviously, the positive of a Jake Gensel, who went out with shoulder surgery. He's a big player on their team. Getting a guy like that was lost for the season, and now potentially could be back if the season does pick up. So there's a lot of things positive. I'm sure in certain markets where teams are looking at that and fans are looking at that and going, man, if we could get going again, I like our chances.
Yeah, it should be fun, but the NHL has kind of said all along their main priority is next year and getting the full season in next year. Like, it sounds like they're willing to sacrifice the Stanley Cup to make sure next year isn't affected.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think it's important next year, for coming out of this pandemic and this global situation, to have the league in a good, healthy spot, and that's just having a full season. That for me, looking at it with the fans, from start to finish, and making sure it's smooth. I know they would, if they could have got like a legit playoffs in, depending on what happens here, as they're taking chunks back out of the season, the league's looking at it, of how it'll affect next year. But I think that has to obviously be on the table when they've got all situations on the table of what they're going to do. The next season it's got to be looked at big time, because it's going to be impacted the further this goes on. It's going to touch into that season, and you're going to go from one season right into another season after just handing the cup off. It would be a weird situation to try to get those 82 games. And so I think it's important for them to look at next season. I think next season, coming out of this will be an important year for the league, and it'll be big. And, I think we have to consider that taking chunks into that or starting late, maybe in like November instead of October, might be a big issue.
Let's talk a little bit about your career, and I was fortunate to cover the early part of it in Red Deer. You were a first-round pick of the Penguins, but you were a sixth-round pick of the Rebels. So how did you go from a sixth-round pick in the WHL draft to a first-round pick in the NHL?
Bad scouts, bad scouts. Maybe at both levels, right?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I gotta say, we had good time, didn't we? In Red Deer?
I loved
a really
it.
Good time. We had it. Yeah, you were awesome with us. Kind of the main Red Deer guy with our team, and we got to know you really well. It was really fun. We did some really fun things. We had a good group of guys and a good team, but I don't know how it happened kind of fast, and I guess that's just kind of a message for all kids out there. And some kids don't even get drafted. I went like sixth round. I don't even know how many rounds in the Western League draft. There was like 7 or 8, so like fairly, like really to the almost the end of the draft to getting selected. And I was fortunate that I was on a good team, like really, truly to make the team. And when Brent Sutter came in and took over, and we had a lot of really good young players, as you know, like Joel Stepp and Boyd Gordon and Doug Lynch and Jeff Wojciechowski, another guy that was undrafted in the Western Hockey League and then was also a first-round draft pick. So we had a lot of just really good young guys mixed with some really talented veteran guys. But it wasn't too long, really, like from being a sixth-round pick in junior to like my development and the way I came along to eventually a few years later. Like really, it was only just a few years later. All of a sudden, at the time we just had like the hockey news, right? Like you look at the hockey news and you see people are talking about you, and we're some of these rankings are going off, and you're like, holy smokes, what's going on here? This is happening really fast. And all at the same time, we're really good competitive team. Obviously, winning the Memorial Cup was huge for that. That was my draft year as well. So I think all that kind of helped out, but it happened fast, and just being on a good team and showing how young players can, in a short amount of time, take some massive steps too. And you're not really, tapped out at 16, 17. There's still quite a bit of room to grow there. And, so you never give up, right? Never give up and, keep working. And I can't take enough away though, from just what it means to also be fortunate enough to be on a really, really good hockey team, which helps.
Well, the thing that I found interesting, Brent's first year was my first year in Red Deer. And then the year after you guys won the Memorial Cup, going in the playoffs, I moved to Regina. So I spent a lot of time around that team, and he played so many young players in your first year. Like it was all young players. And it's almost like he accelerated your development because you guys won the Memorial Cup the next year. I mean, the growth period that you guys experienced in that first year was fun to watch. I also remember in that 2001 season, and we may have talked about this before, Justin Mappletoft led the league in scoring. Was he not supposed to pay off in a bottle for anybody who helped set him up?
That was the thing, right? You remember that, right?
I do remember that.
100%. Because the last game, I think he was trying to track down Lane Ulmer in Swift Current, who I think he was like 3 points up going into the last game. And I think Mapes got like 4 points that game, or it was something like that. It was something crazy where he had to pass him. He had to get 3 points.
3 points,
down by
you're
2.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. And he said whoever got like points on his goals, he'd buy them a bottle. Of course, he never bought us any bottle.
Nothing, no.
No, heck no. But man, yeah, I to your other point about us young guys, and like, like Brent gave us like tons of opportunity to play one in lots of different situations as young guys coming in, because we had like 6 or 7 16-year-olds or 16, 17-year-olds that were like pretty good. But he also pushed us really, really hard and held us really accountable, and then held us also, our young guys, accountable to the rest of the groups of the older guys too. So he kind of like a way he kind of played the young guys off the old guys a little bit, and the old guys to push the young guys. And it just made like a really good mix, and brought us really together and playing together. Like, we had, some big trades also. If you recall, we picked up Kyle Wanvig, who's, 50 goal scorer that year. And then at the trade deadline, we went out and got Marty Erad from Saskatoon. Who
he was special.
Unbelievable.
He was
for
so
us.
special, so fast.
Like incredibly, like one of the best junior players I got to see with my own eyes. So fast, so skilled. He could score. He could make plays. It was such a huge add to us. But then you sprinkle in like a lot of the young guys we had with the mix of old guys. Like the young guys just weren't buried in the bottom of the lineup. Like they were big parts of that team. Like in the Memorial Cup, I remember I was on a line with Boyd Gordon and Joel Stepp and myself on a line. And I mean, we're playing against Val-d'Or, against Brandon Reed, Simone Gamache, and like these guys that got like 200 points in the Quebec Major Junior League. And we're like the shutdown line. And here we're all 17 years old, 16, 17 years. It was wild to put us in that position to be like a checking line against these dynamos of the CHL. And, that's what, positions that Brent put us in and put us in to succeed and expected us to. But man, we had a good group. I had a fun time. Red Deer was like the best place to play, like best travel, middle, central to everything. It was easy to get everywhere. The city was awesome and behind us, big time. We're packing rinks and there was a lot of excitement in town. And, even like I had fun with you, man. Like I called in, wasn't Sutsy on a show with you? I called in. It was hilarious.
Yeah, it was like,
hilarious.
I was a little bit older, but not a whole lot older than you guys. So I was having fun, being part of the team, or not being part of the team, but being part of the groundswell in that city, because you guys lost the first year Brent had in the playoffs quickly. And then the next year, it just picked up so much steam. The ERAT trade was massive. And also I remember, I think it was game 3 of the Hitman series. You guys won in overtime. And I think you were out on the ice because I asked Brent after, I'm like, why did you switch up the lines and put Armstrong with Wanvig? And he's like, no, Armstrong just didn't come off. And they ended up scoring or something. But that Calgary series was so great. I remember Kyle Wanvig high-fiving the Hitman bench after a goal. Like it was just animosity everywhere.
Yeah, the thing that was such a massive rivalry against Hitmen because they were so good too, and it was like they were such a big step for us to like convince ourselves in our minds that we could beat them. And I remember, Brent said to us one time, like, "What's with this team? Like, it's like you guys let them beat you before we even get off the bus." And like for whatever reason, that kind of clicked with us. Like, okay, like we need to change something here. We need to find another level to beat these guys because they were pretty stacked and they were fast, they were skilled, they were like one of those puck possession skilled fast teams that just really did whatever they wanted on the ice. And then to battle them as a young team and see how good they were with the Kristanoviches and Brendels and Chris Beach and Matt Kinch on defense, and then they had like Brent Cron, who was a first round NHL pick as well, in net. They just had a really, really good, solid, skilled team. And for us to start making our way in and starting to kind of beat them as we kind of started to get better, we kind of said, okay, we could take these guys. But we had a group that we could play a 1-2-1 game and beat you tight checking, or we could beat you 6-5, or we could, we had enough guys too that we could get rough with you as well. And we could kind of win a lot of different ways, which is a good thing about our team, and I think it helped us in beating a team like Calgary. That series too. My parents came down to the game. I don't know if it was like double OT, but we lost game 1.
Yeah.
In Red Deer. Game 2 went to like double overtime. My parents came to the game. I didn't know they were coming. I scored the overtime winning goal to make it 1-1 going back to Calgary. Because I truly think if we would have lost that, it would have been really tough to go into Calgary.
Yeah.
Down 2 games with how good their team really was. But we were able to, go in 1-1, and then we just went on fire. I think Joel Stepp had a massive, rest of the series against Calgary. He turned it up huge for us, scoring some massive goals, and we kind of just ran through them. And then after that, I was after we beat them, I think I don't even know when that was, the second round.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, okay, here we go. Like we could win now that we beat Calgary. I think we could just win this whole thing right now. So. Yeah, it was a special year. Probably my most favorite year of hockey of my life.
Well, yeah, and you guys basically took out. You didn't have a whole lot of problems with Swift and then Portland in the final, and then obviously the overtime winner against Val-d'Or in Regina, where the deflection and those were both games against Val-d'Or were pretty hard fought in the Memorial Cup.
Yeah, they were good, and they were high-scoring games. And
Yeah.
The crazy thing is like there was no. I don't remember. I don't think there was YouTube. Not like we didn't know any of these guys. Just guys that we've seen at like World Juniors or guys that you read about in the hockey news. It's just so different than like not knowing really any of these players, the way they play, what their tendencies are, who they are, what they actually look like, how fast they really are. Like you kind of go into that having really no clue. And then to see these guys and how good they were and how fast they were and how offensive they were. I mean, they had a guy, Chris Linus, who I ended up going to Penguins camp with.
Yeah.
I think they signed him. He was a defenseman on Valdor's team. He had like 110 points that year as a defenseman. It's crazy. And these guys put up a couple hundred points. So, both those games we played against them were high scoring, and obviously both went to overtime. And we ended up on the right side both times against them, luckily. And but we remember the final game was so scary because we were down by a couple goals,
Yep.
and they ended up taking a couple penalties, and we scored at the end of the second, and then to start the third, we were still on the second part of the power play. And I think Kyle Wandvig scored to tie it up, which was huge. And then we traded goals after that, but we were in a big hole and ended up battling out of it. But those games were like, I don't even remember the score. It's
6-5.
6-5 and 6-5 both games.
I
Like,
think,
that's
yeah.
crazy. That's awesome. That was good hockey. The 6-5 games like that.
It was. That was. I've been able to cover a lot of Memorial Cups. That was probably the most fun. So you get drafted. You become a Penguin. You play in the American Hockey League. You've played with some pretty amazing players. Alexander Daigle was on a team that you played with. What was Alexander Daigle like at that point?
Yeah, well, I know, like, everyone knew who he was, right? He was first overall, and good-looking guy, and he got the NHL career and everything that comes with it. And all of a sudden, he's playing on our team in Wilkes-Barre. It was interesting to get a guy like that with the clout that came with having him. But I thought he was awesome. He's so fast. He had an incredible shot. He could make plays, and he was really, really good for us. A guy that's first round pick to be at that time in his career down in Wilkes-Barre playing in the minors. He could have had a bad attitude or something could have came with it. But I thought he was a good teammate. I thought he was great there. I enjoyed him. He's actually a really funny guy too. Like, I enjoyed hanging around him. He's really good to have around. And yeah, we had lots of, at that time too, like Pittsburgh was, pretty broke and going through bankruptcy issues and financial issues with the team. And, there's talk that the team was going to move a little bit when I was there. So, all of our first round picks, and they'd been, bad for a while, all of our guys were all down in the minors. So we had like a really, really good young team, really full of like first and second round picks mixed with a few like veteran American League legends. And some of those journeyman guys, but I got to play with some really good players, much the same kind of like in Red Deer. Like, they just kind of brought us all along together down there just because of the situation, and no one got called up. And one of the years with the lockouts, we were all down there playing together, and we just kind of grew together, and then kind of all moved up a little, a good handful of us all moved up together up to Pittsburgh at the same time.
Was your NHL rookie season, was it not Lemieux's last season too?
Yeah. Like,
what was that like?
Lemieux's spot.
Thanks, Mario. I've got it from here, right?
Yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, he retired for the last time, and I took a spot. Yeah, I'll take it. No worries, bud. No, it was crazy. It was crazy, right? Because that year to start, I think Eddie Olczyk was coaching, and they had, like, they had a bunch of really, like, older veteran guys that had come in there. And I don't know, like, what the salary situations were then. I don't really remember paying attention to it, but I imagine it was, like, guys kind of near the end of their career, veteran guys that had played in the league for, 15 years or something that came into Pittsburgh. And, and then you mix that in with, like, Sid. It was Sid's first year as well. So you have all these guys. And then, like, Buckberger, and I think Bergevin was still there. If I recall, I might be wrong. He might have retired the year before that or been traded away. Mike Eastwood, like, a lot of these guys, we were just kind of like a little bit on the back nine of their career, or even closer to the end, mixed in with an 18-year-old Sidney Crosby, and they got off to like a brutal start. And meanwhile, our team in the minors at the time was all still young guys. Like no one had really gotten called up yet, and we went on like we hadn't lost a game in like 25. We were 25-0, I think. It was crazy. We were just on fire. We were dominating. We'd been together for 3 years, so that was the start of our 4th year altogether. And they switched the coaches. Our coach Michelle Therrien went up, and that's when kind of things started to kind of start turning over. Eventually the guys started getting called up, and they started, bringing some young legs and some guys to get their first kicks at the can up with Pittsburgh. And that was right around the time, that Mario retired for the last time. And I actually got called up 2 weeks later. I was there. He held this big conference thing, and I was in the back of the room at Mario's announcing his retirement. I was there. It was crazy.
What was that like? Like this guy is he was like larger than life.
Yeah, he was. Like, I remember being at camp with him, and, when I went there at 18, he was there, and, just seeing him walk around, there's something about him when he walks in a room, just your jaw drops, and you just stare at him, like probably like any fan would. And that's the way it was for me. And most guys, there's like an aura about him when he's just around. It's just, one of those special guys. But I remember, at training camp, I got to skate on a line with him at camp, and trust me, talk about stressful, being 19 years old and trying to every time you get the puck, you're trying to pass it to Mario, no matter if there's 10 guys on him, you're trying to thread it to him. It's just crazy. But I remember standing the half moon shooting at camp, this guy's in the corner, pass the puck, shoot at the net, no screen, nothing. And I remember I was standing next to him, and massive guy too, 6'5", huge, just smooth, gets the puck, takes the shot, goes through the goalie's arm. After 3 times shooting, I'm talking out past the top of the circles, no screen, nothing, just putting it through the goalies. I go, excuse me, Mario, how do you do that? How do you what? Because he kept scoring, it's NHL goalies. And he goes, well, I take the pass, I take a quick look, and then I shoot it, and then I'm. That's how he explained it to me. It's so easy for him. He didn't even know how to explain to me how good he was. I was just oh, okay, thanks. Thanks, Rod. I'll just keep hacking divots. I'll just keep hacking divots out of the ice here. It was all 85 of me trying to lean on my Coho Revolution.
Oh,
thanks
man.
for the advice. It was just crazy being around him. And I mean, we had I was going to camp Kovalev, Straka, Lemieux, Morozov. We had all these amazing other players. Robert Lang. It was actually wild being around some of these guys, how skilled and good they really were, and around some of those teams at that time. And eventually to be able to make the team was incredible around that time too. John LeClaire, Mark Recchi were on the team. Lyle Oldline was there. We had some other really good veteran guys that were still kicking around when Mario retired and I got called up. So it was really cool.
What do you remember about skating with Sidney Crosby for the first time?
I remember watching him from the glass when he was on another session before me. When you I saw him in the Memorial Cup the year before when they lost to London. And I remember I was up in Loon Lake, Saskatchewan. I was up at my aunt and uncle's cabin watching the final on TV on the couch at the lake. And that was the first time I'd heard about him a ton. You hear everything. Remember Jay Bouwmeester? How big a talk it was about Jay Bouwmeester in the Western League when I was coming up. He's younger than me by a year, but everything was this guy's the next thing. Jay Bouwmeester's unbelievable. And look at his career. He said, look what he's been able to do. But you're hearing stuff like Sidney Crosby's the next Wayne Gretzky. This stuff was going. So that was the first time I saw him on TV. But to see him with your own eyes, standing there at camp and him doing the inter squad game and just the plays he was making, how fast he was, how strong he was, how confident he was at 18 years old out in an NHL ice service, all these good players. I was just holy smokes. Guys were just shaking their heads at how incredible he was at that age, and how good he was. So to see him, it's so crazy just to see guys with your own eyes. I've yet to see Connor McDavid with my own eyes play yet.
Oh, really?
I worked. Yeah, I want to see him with my own. I saw him. Sorry, I saw him at the World Cup in Toronto.
Right.
I saw that, but I don't know. There was just so much going on. There were so many guys on the team. It's just different. I just want to see him in the NHL, like at the level, like what he looks like and how fast it looks to see him with your own. Because like you watch him on TV, like I do a lot of Oilers games in sports, and you watch him and he's just like incredible, right? But I just want to see, like, to get a look at a guy with your own eyes in real life, like live, is something else. So I can't wait till I could see Connor McDavid with my own eyes. It's like one of those things to see those guys, like, you know, in the flesh and how fast they look going by guys in real life, not on TV, and you know, watch them away from the puck, those kind of things, and see how good they are that way. You know, that's what it was like watching Sid.
Yeah, McDavid, it's an absolute pleasure. You played your first game in like the right before New Year's Eve, your NHL game.
Yeah.
Then you got your first point a few games later, your first goal a few games later. What was your NHL I made it moment? Was there maybe it was you scored the first goal in the outdoor game? That was pretty cool. But what was the moment where you're like, yeah, I'm an NHLer now?
Oh, interesting. I would say maybe at the end, it's crazy, at the end of the year, at our year-end meetings, because I only got called up at like around Christmas,
right,
New Year's, and I would say at the end of the year meeting when like Terry like, my coach was like, all right, Army, like, now you established yourself, you know, you're an NHL guy, now the work begins to stay here, you got to do this. And I was just like, whoa, okay. And then from then on, I was so scared to get sent down. Like, I was so scared of getting sent down every single year. Like, no joke. But I guess maybe in game, I guess just scoring your first goal, I think is one of those moments where it's like, oh, like, finally welcome to the NHL. Your first game is awesome, but your first goal is just so special and incredible feeling. And but you know, I just think of the feeling, you know, to put on an NHL jersey finally and to like get out on the ice. Because I was a first round pick, but I played 3.5 years in the minors. You know, like a lot of guys from my draft year that were all taken in the first round had already had like a handful or a bunch of games already at least. So I was kind of late to the party and took a little longer to develop in the minors before I was ready, like professionally, to, you know, get in the NHL consistency wise as well with my game to get ready to play there. So, you know, I paid my dues down there and I got better and I worked on my game, and to the point where I was kind of, you know, a real good player in the American League my last year there when I got called up. Like, I was probably close to getting, like, I probably would have had 30 some goals for sure. But you know, I was ready to go at that time, and I was given an opportunity, and I wouldn't let them send me back down. I think it's because I was so scared, dude. I was just so scared of going back to the minors. That's so scary.
What? Yeah, well, exactly. That's your motivation. And then that Pittsburgh team's coming together. I mean, what was it like getting the call that you were traded?
Oh yeah, we started getting good. We knew we were going to be good. Like, we had guys like Brooks Orpik, Rod Scuderi on defense. I got to be missing something. Ryan Whitney, another guy that was there.
Yeah,
we had a bunch of young guys all at the time that really come up together. We had Marc-Andre Fleury, first overall pick in net. You know, we had you know, Sid, Gino, Stahl down the middle, and then we had just kind of a smattering of other real good young talent and other guys around it. And I remember the year before that we made the playoffs for the first time. That was the first time I'd experienced playoffs, playing against Ottawa in the first round. And that was the year Ottawa went on to the finals, lost Anaheim in the final. But they were a really good team. But, you know, at the end of that year, I just remember like sitting there with like Ryan Malone and like Sid and some of these guys in the dressing room. And just like, no, we're going to be good next year. Like, we just had a feeling, you know, when it just starts coming together and things start clicking, you start understanding like what it takes to, you know, be a good team. And sure enough, the next year, like we were on fire. We were playing, I think, first place in the conference or division. And when I got traded at the time in that Hossa trade, right at the deadline, and I knew we were going to be like, we were just building to being one of those teams that was like, we could have a run this year. Like, we could win the cup. And so it was like heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking to move out of here, especially when I play like three years with, you know, majority of the core guys on that team in the minors. And then, you know, a couple of years up with them in the NHL with, you know, the likes of like Sidney, Gino, and Stahl and those guys mixed in there, just really good young guys as well. And just a good group, and to be building towards something. It stung bad to get moved to Atlanta.
All right, lastly, because I know you got something right after this. You were a Leaf and a Canadian. You work in Toronto for Sportsnet. You also work in Pittsburgh, but you were a Leaf and a Canadian. I mean, there's not
Yeah.
there's not probably two more hotbeds of hockey in the NHL than those two, is there?
No, I know, like totally. And when I was in Atlanta and I became a free agent, I was like, Dean, I was like, seriously, I want to go somewhere where there's like fans. I want to go somewhere where it's like, hockey passion. When I was down there, for the few years that I was just kind of itching to get back into like a hockey market that was like alive, not like Atlanta's. So I was like, I want something. And when it became a chance for me to go to Toronto at that time, I jumped at it. I wasn't a Leaf fan growing up, but like everyone's a Leaf fan, I felt like. But I to play in a market like that with the history that they have and how good they are, how good their franchise has been, over however how many years, 100 plus now, and at the time in 2010, I was like, this is incredible. This is like where I want to go. I want to kind of be in the be in the fire. I want to be in a place where it's like the expectations are big and like you put that maple leaf on, it's incredible. And then from that, get terrible injury issues in Toronto. I signed a 3-year deal there to the last year, getting bought out of the contract and signing like 2 days later with Montreal, like my childhood team. And that was a lockout year, so I only got to play half a year there. But we did make the playoffs. So to play for my favorite childhood team, the Montreal Canadiens as well, in an awesome market, like just like Toronto, and make the playoffs and come out of the Bell Center like in the playoffs was just unbelievable feeling. It was a good way. That was the last year. That was my last ticket at NHL moment. Was to play for my childhood, team and make the playoffs and feel that energy and play in those great atmospheres in both those cities is awesome. You're right. I was pretty lucky, and I guarantee it. Probably it's like being on a good team, and helps you, find success. And playing in those markets, I think, have helped me to be doing what I'm doing post career now.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I mean, you scored your last goal March 19th, 2013 versus Buffalo, Jonas Enroth, I think. But I knew you would get into broadcasting.
That was a beauty.
It was a beauty. Describe it.
It was a beauty. The puck, I don't know, the puck was working around the corner. Alex Galchenyuk got it. I found myself like alone in front, and he passed it to me. I picked it up on my forehand. I'm a righty, and I was standing in front of Enroth, so I had like my back to him. So I got it on my forehand. I pulled it like I was going to shoot, and then I just took it to my backhand and tucked the far post on him for my knees. And it was like a big goal near the end. It was a big goal. Our team was, I think we had a good team that year. Like I thought we were going to win the cup that lockout year. We were just that good. We ran into injury troubles in the first round of playoffs against Ottawa. They knocked us out, but we were a really, really good team. And that was a big goal. We were 1-1. We had like 45 shots on Buffalo that game. We couldn't quite, get that next one. And so that goal put us 2-1 to win the game. It was awesome. It was a good goal, but incredible feeling scoring a goal in the Bell Center. It was awesome.
Yeah, no doubt. And I knew you'd be destined for TV. You do some, of course, analyst work for Sportsnet and for the Pittsburgh Penguins. You have the personality and the knowledge. So this has been a lot of fun, man. Thanks for doing this, and let's try to do it again, and we can get into some more stories at some point.
Absolutely, Dino. It's great hearing your voice. It's been a while since I last talked to you. And thanks for everything for back in the day in Red Deer and being so good with our group and giving us those experiences of interviews and being on camera and sitting on your shows and doing all that stuff. It was an incredible feeling.
Then the snow came down. I smiled, you frowned. I said, let's build a snowman. You said you're on your own, man. I said, let's bust out the skate sticks, toques, skis, boots, toboggans. You told me all downtrodden, I'll be in my room. All gloom and doom, just because the snow came.
This is the Sports and More podcast with Dean Millard.
The day before the snow came.
That's the sweet sounds of Sweet Bejesus. That's Winter Suckface, the official band music of Sports and More, the podcast. Big thanks to Kevin Dabbs and Christian Gutzis for allowing us to play their music. You can get their debut album, Policeman's Creek, on Apple Music and other places where you find great music. So I appreciate those guys allowing us to use their music. Kevin Dabbs is a pretty good friend of mine. And Colby Armstrong, what a guest. So funny. That Mariel Lemieux crack and the crack about his getting drafted is so funny. I was really lucky to get to know Colby when he was 17 years old and been able to stay in touch throughout his career. So appreciated his time. And man, we did have a lot of fun. That Memorial Cup, not just the tournament in Regina, but the whole playoffs. I traveled a little bit with the team. And here's a veteran move. This is what I did as a veteran move when I got to Regina for the Memorial Cup. Ordered 3 large pizzas and then spent the rest of my per diem on partying. That's what I did as a 2001 Memorial Cup. So 19 years ago. I'm a little bit smarter now. I would probably only order 2 pizzas now and still spend the rest on party things. Anyway, big thanks to Colby. That was a lot of fun and a lot of laughs for sure. All right, we need to get to the ultimate franchise fantasy sports poll question, and it regarding the Stanley Cup and what might happen. We all want to see best of 7. Yes, we all want to see it, but I don't think that's going to happen. So let's take best of 7 out of the equation. I don't think there's going to be a playoff. I'm even less optimistic than on Colby. I'd say like 99% they're not going to have a season. It's going to take a miracle. So let's throw 7 games out for this question. Regarding the Stanley Cup, which would you prefer? 1-game series, winner take all. 3-game series, 5-game series, or no Stanley Cup. It's 16 wins or bust. Right now, 5-game series is leading the way at 44%. 27% say no cup, 16 wins or bust. 17% say best of 3, only 12% say 1-game series. You can have your say. It'll be up there for another 5 days and 18 hours, according to Twitter. At Duck Millard is where you can vote on that poll question. So, regarding the Stanley Cup, which would you prefer? 1 game, 3 games, 5 games, or no cup unless you win 16 games. And you can get more details, as I mentioned earlier, at www.uffsports.com. Ultimate Franchise Fantasy Sports. It's awesome. You own the game. Thanks very much for tuning in to this podcast, episode 40, featuring Colby Armstrong. If you did, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. It's really important to know how to make this show a little bit better. So your thoughts do mean a lot to us. So let us know. Leave us a Google review or a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to be a part of the show as an advertiser, please email me, sportsandmorepod@gmail.com. That is sportsandmorepod@gmail.com. That's going to wrap things up for episode 40. Big thanks to Colby Armstrong of Rogers Sportsnet and, of course, a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins broadcast and a 2001 Memorial Cup champion. We'll talk to you again next week. Playtime is over. We leave you with Beach Bag from Sweet Bejesus, their debut album, Policeman's Creek.
Tide's out, I'm in love with my lover. The sun beating down, it's time to take cover. So I stab the west end with the umbrella. Gonna find the perfect time to tell her. Zigzags, loose change, and a brand new diamond ring. The bottom of a beach bag. Love you so true. Yeah. Love you no blue. She's got the wing on the iPod. I've got the camera on the tripod. I'm gonna keep the shutter open for the rest of the day. I'm gonna capture every single move that she make. Hash crumbs, a hair elastic, and a brand new diamond ring. The bottom of a beach bag. Love you so true, yeah. Love you no blue. I know you know that I've not the greatest past. I'm here to tell you as my heart is beating fast that I'm going to change my ways, going to set it straight, going to change today, going to change it, yeah. What the fuck, some dumb drunk musclehead redneck invading space all over my girlfriend. He's trying to flirt with her, touch her, and all up and down. She's holding her own as his buddies are holding me down. Fresh rounds, a silencer, and my 9mm friend. The bottom of a beach bag. Sweet lead, blood red, they dead. Yeah. Pack up the beach bag.